everybody needs an advocate.
Because I'm not there 24/7.
Families that have hemophilia mature faster.
Well, I've been feeling a lot of anxiety lately.
I'm so tired of being strong.
To understand how far we've come helps you appreciate where we are now.
No is just no for this person. Somebody's gonna say yes sooner or later.
And it helps you understand that there are more steps to be taken in the future.
You're the first person I've met with a bleeding disorder.
Let's fight the disease and not the people who have it.
This episode of the Powering Through podcast is brought to you by NCHS, National Cornerstone Healthcare Services, a subsidiary of NCHS Holdings. NCHS is a full-service healthcare organization which, through its affiliates, includes an accredited specialty pharmacy founded to serve people with hemophilia and other blood disorders and to optimize patient quality of life by providing personalized healthcare services in addition to pharmacy services. NCHS makes independence the goal for people living with chronic disorders. They believe the home or an alternate non-clinical setting is the best place to receive treatments, which is why they do much more than just fill prescriptions. Patients of NCHS can also expect medication therapy management, coordination of nursing services, and much more, including translation services for non-English speakers. Learn more about NCHS services and the team who provides them by visiting nchswecare.com. Once again, that's nchswecare.com.
Hello and welcome to the Powering Through podcast, featuring panel conversations on obstacles, challenges, and what it takes to overcome, held for the benefit of the bleeding disorders community. The Powering Through podcast is sponsored by NCHS, produced by BloodStream Media, and I am your host, Heather Robb. You can subscribe to the Powering Through podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts to have the most recent episode delivered directly to you. And visit poweringthrough.org to see videos, photos, and other podcast episodes from all of our Powering Through events. In this episode, we give a listen to our Powering Through event held as part of the Eastern Pennsylvania chapter of NHF's Adventures in Learning program. Our participants on this panel were community members Devin Kress and Kelly Kimmel, filmmaker Naomi McDougall Jones, and the host of the Powering Through panel is Patrick James Lynch. We start our conversation with Devin. Devin's studying forensic science at Penn State, and he talks about the significance of connecting with the hemophilia community for the first time at Double H Ranch, a camp for kids with various chronic disorders. So let's take a listen to our Eastern Pennsylvania Powering Through event, starting with Devin Kress.
So Devin, you live with severe hemophilia A as well.
Yep.
You are a junior at Penn State studying forensic science.
Yep.
What got you into forensic science?
I wanted to go into be a police officer, I thought at first. I was always good at math and science. Going into forensics would be the best of both worlds since I knew I could handle it and I could still get the satisfaction of being in the criminal justice system and doing something with my life every day and changing the world for the better.
That leading you to an interest in forensic science that wasn't necessarily in lieu of your participating in sports or being physical as a kid. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up and negotiating hemophilia and sports and trying to get involved with athletics?
When I was a kid, the doctors never really suggested I play sports. So I wanted to be in sports too. They were like, we strongly advise against it, but I still played as many sports as I could. I played basketball, soccer, baseball, really anything until it got more competitive and I realized it was getting more dangerous. So I realized I had to make a choice and I decided to just stop playing sports, but I focused my competitiveness in my academics as an outlet, more or less.
It's one thing to know, all right, maybe this is the part of my life where I gotta start phasing out of sports. It's another thing to mentally and emotionally come to grips with that in a satisfying way, but were you able to somewhat seamlessly channel that competitiveness without too much difficulty?
Yeah, I think so.
It sounded more like a yes and no.
Like I still played after school sports, like with my friends or my cousins. We played with that and I got satisfaction out of beating them in like football, or not that I played football, no, we can't do that. Or whatever we played.
No, but we can't.
No,
it's really not a good idea.
Yeah. No, don't tell the doctor. But
now, Devin, you're not supposed to say don't tell the doctor.
Right.
We went over this, Devin. We went over how the panel's supposed to go.
Just kidding, tell the doctor everything.
But that is a real thing. I mean, the pressure as a kid, especially when your friends are playing sports and playing sports that you can't play.
Yeah, you want to do what your peers want to do, and that's probably whenever I was youngest. That was the hardest thing to grip with hemophilia. I never really wanted to let anyone tell me that I couldn't do those things, so I tried to push the boundaries. And I learned that when things got pushed too far, there was consequences, and I learned my own boundaries.
Experience is the best teacher.
Exactly.
You have a little bit of a history with hemophilia and bleeding disorders in the family, right? Can you speak to that?
I'm the only one in my family with hemophilia. My uncle, who I never met, he had hemophilia, which is how they knew to check me whenever I was born. But there was an incident when he was only a few years old, and he passed away when he was younger.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you didn't meet other people in your age group with hemophilia for quite a while either.
No,
right?
yeah, I didn't know anyone else with hemophilia. The first experience that I had was at the H Ranch. I got to go there 3 times. I wish I would have went when I was younger and knew about it, because it was where I met a lot of people with hemophilia, and it was some of the like best memories probably of my life.
Can you tell people a little bit more, like what is the H Ranch?
So the H Ranch, it's a camp for people with disabilities, not just hemophilia. And it's where people who can't normally experience sleepaway camp, or whatever you want to call it. And it's a week-long camp, so basically you just get to have the whole camp experience with a bunch of other kids with your either disability or a disability other than yours. And you get to see that you're not the only one out there struggling, especially if you, like me, haven't ever met anyone with hemophilia. And you get to really make some good bonds with some really cool people. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
And what did it do for you when you did meet other people with hemophilia? How did that impact you specifically?
For me, it really opened up my mind to show that I'm not alone. Before that point, I never really talked to anyone. And it gave me experiences that I never got to have before. And it allowed me to relate to a lot of people in ways that I never have. It's run by people who know that, yeah, these kids are different, but they also are special and they can handle themselves. They know that you know your limits, and you can just be yourself for a week and meet some really cool people.
I learned a lot about the power of adaptation, right?
Yeah.
How you can adapt something you want to do, an activity, a goal, to fit who you are, regardless of what that means specifically. There's always a way to adapt if you're open to it. Can you just share with us what your journey has been from being a kid through now that enabled you to be independent and taking care of yourself?
I think it was around 3 when I went to Prophy, and then...
I thought you were going to say I was around 3 when I started self-infusing.
No, that's amazing.
Devin, you are a prodigy. I had no idea. Okay, so you're 3 when you started Prophy. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah, I started Prophy, and then it was around when I was 7 or so that I stopped going to a pediatric doctor to get infusions, and just stopping going to the doctors every week, every 3 days a week, is a little bit more freedom. I didn't learn how to do it till I was 13. I probably felt confident enough to do it around when I was 10. After seeing it done so many times, I got to actually practice with my parents, so that was fun.
You have brave parents.
Yeah. After seeing it done multiple times, you feel confident enough to do it, but even if you don't feel confident, just after you are able to do it, then it opens so much more opportunities as before.
You know, we have a number of teenagers in the room and parents who I'm sure at some point or another are thinking about their children going to college. Is there anything that you've learned in the 2.5-ish years that you've been in school that has been valuable and might be worth sharing about what it's like to manage hemophilia in college?
Really just setting them up to be able to walk on their own feet. At the point of keep my factor and knowing when I need it more and keeping my logs up to date if you do that.
Logging is important, and it's becoming, but seriously it is, and especially in a climate where insurance companies around the country are becoming a little bit more challenging. We do take very expensive medication, and it is annoying. It's not hard, but it is annoying. And once you infuse, it's like, I want to be done. The needle's out, gauze, Band-Aid, now I'm on with my life. Another minute is necessary to just make sure you log, because it would be horrific to get a call from an insurance company that said, we're not going to continue to pay for this extremely expensive medication on a prophylaxis regimen if we don't have any evidence that it's being used as prescribed. So it's annoying, and it is like a thing that we all realize we should. It's like flossing. We know we should do it, but how many of us do? But it is truly important, and I think it's becoming more important. So that's my little PSA on logging. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's fine. The best way to prepare them to be successful is to just make sure they know what to do, and like if they don't know how to do something yet, or then show them and have them continue to do it.
Next up, we hear from Kelly Kimmel, who shares an incredibly rare condition with both her daughter and mom, platelet type von Willebrand with factor VIII deficiency. She talks about how her approach to parenting differs from the way she was raised and how she survived some unimaginable heartbreak. Here's Kelly.
So Kelly, you have a particularly interesting diagnosis, as it were, something that's particularly rare and unique and only somewhat understood. Could you just share with everybody what it is that brings you here?
I have platelet type von Willebrand with a factor VIII deficiency. And not much is known. It's just kind of, oh, that's new.
Not necessarily what you want to hear in a clinical setting.
No, it's something you just have to grin and bear.
How many people are thought to have it?
This specific with factor VIII is 3, and that's me, my mom, and my youngest daughter.
So rare. Well, that's quite rare.
Yeah.
And how did you learn that this is what the 3 of you had?
Oh, after many years. I guess after they kind of check-marked all the boxes on, well, it's not this, it's not that. It's kind of this, mixed with that.
And when were you diagnosed?
The official diagnosis was only a few years ago.
And what led to that specifically?
I'm not sure how they came about. I was seeing them many, many years, and they were just trying to keep me alive after the surgeries and what have you.
And you said the surgeries, were these surgeries that you needed to get in some way or another as a result of this diagnosis, or were they unrelated, but the treating of you during the surgeries was the complicating part?
Yeah, and it never happens during surgery, it's always after. In my younger years, it was maybe like the pregnancies up to a week after that I had to go back in and get all the blood and factor and platelets.
But then at the aftercare, when there's complications?
Yes. There's never just one thing I need. It's platelets and red blood cells, or platelets, factor, and white blood cells. It's whatever. It's always a mix of, I don't know. It's never the same thing twice.
What does living with your diagnosis look like? How does it impact your life?
Well, we just went to the Penn State-Michigan game, and I came home with a bruise on my palm bigger than a tennis ball. And I have no idea.
Were you clapping very, very hard?
I might have been.
So a lot of mystery is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. It's just, sometimes I'll get a bruise like this, and other times there'll be a little red mark, and that'd be it. The red mark goes away and all is well.
For your mother and your daughter, the other 2 people in the world that we know have this precise diagnosis, do they experience similar, somewhat mysterious and ever-changing symptoms, or is their experience different?
Theirs is more, I don't know if you'd say typical, but I seem to be the worst of the 3.
And you speak from experience, obviously, and what you're living with, but you also went through something in your early 20s, which is quite unfortunate that you had shared with me. If you wouldn't mind sharing that experience and what you learned from that experience.
I lost my first child from sudden infant death. And you know what, just after that, I think I was, not that I wasn't infected, but I seen that, how short things can be, and kind of more or less helped everybody else out, because, it was tragic, but you learn from things like that happen to you, and you move on, and or let your children experience life too. That's another thing. Growing up, my mother was very fearful all the time. And well, in school, when I first went to elementary and then junior high, she was called several times wondering why I was so bruised and battered with bruises the size of grapefruits. And
I'm generally curious how that influenced your parenting, and then if you had to make distinctions between your 2 daughters because one was living with this condition and the other was not. So if you could kind of answer both of those.
I let my kids be kids, as long as it wasn't going to hurt them. I was there to support, told them no tattoos till they were 6.
No tattoos until 6.
Yeah.
So you do draw a firm line in some places.
I drew a firm line.
Yeah. Around 5 and a half, were they starting to try to round up and play that logic on you?
The heart with Mom.
Yeah.
Mom, it has your name on it.
That's not for nothing. I mean, that says something.
That, responsible.
Oh, well, I appreciate that you do set boundaries. That does seem important. Describe for me what gratitude looks like in your life.
Gratitude to me looks like a grandbaby that has a lot of challenges on his own, but is just loving life. Every time you look at him, he has a big smile. I'm very grateful he's here. Every morning I wake up, I'm grateful, because, who knows? It's just, I'm thankful for the wonderful husband I have, the great kids. It's just, you gotta look even at the smallest things.
Last, we hear from actress and director Naomi McDougall Jones. Naomi discusses gender disparity within the film industry and her recent film, Bite Me. We'll jump back in to hear from Naomi right after this quick word from our sponsor.
You've heard from NCHS about the services they provide to their patients. Now they'd like you to meet one of those patients, Joe. When Joe first moved to St. Louis, it was a bit of a shock. It's a big city, he was looking for a job. He didn't have much time to try to figure out his new insurance policy or figure out how he'd continue to receive his factor. Joe made a call to an NCHS rep he met at a conference, Kara, and Kara helped Joe get his coverage and his care in order. She ordered Joe's factor and made sure it got to him on the same day every month. She'd call to make sure everything arrived in order and check in on him periodically to make sure that he was keeping up with his care. Kara works for NCHS, the specialty pharmacy and healthcare organization, and this is what she does. She takes some of the hassle out of everyday life with a bleeding disorder. So Joe was able to focus on self-care without having to spend hours on the phone with doctors, pharmacies, or insurers. His factor and supplies showed up on time every month in the right quantities, and if there was ever a problem, he could call Kara. She just made life easier. NCHS. We care for life.
Naomi wears a lot of hats. Some of them include an actor, a writer, a producer, a filmmaker in general, as well as an advocate and speaker on behalf of women in film and filmmaking. And then you studied to be an actor, graduated, and started the actor life in New York, the actor grind. But from what I've gathered from your story, pretty early on started finding some challenges that you were not happy with. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I was raised by a raging feminist to believe...
What is a raging feminist? Like, how to define what that is for us?
Well, I'll tell the story that I tell in my TED Talk, which is that my mom, I was obsessed with the sound of music like a lot of little girls, and so I was running around singing I Am 16 going on 17 all the time, and one day my mother stopped me and she said, okay, I'm not going to tell you that you can't sing that song, but if you are going to sing that song, we need to have a major conversation about the gender constructs it reinforces. So that's
And you were how old?
7, I don't know. So I was brought up to believe that I would have no obstacles as a woman, that I should not expect anything less from my life than anybody would because I'm a woman. And so that's the expectation with which I entered the film industry, and then quickly realized that, oh, there are very real obstacles, and the parts available for women are terrible. They're extremely narrow. You have to look a specific way. You can't be too interesting. You can't be too smart. My agent told me very early on, yeah, I don't really know what to do with you. Like, you're too smart for the roles that you're the right age for, and you're not quite hot enough to be the lead girl. So like, I think you'll work when you're like 35. So then I got really frustrated with that and started making films because there weren't interesting parts for women to play, so I wrote them. And then started trying to make films, and then quickly heard, oh yeah, but people don't want to hear stories about women, people don't want to watch those movies, or like, oh yeah, but you're gonna have to get a male producer on board, your teams, just so that people will trust you with their money. And I was just like, what year are we in? Like, what? I couldn't believe it.
And just to pause, when you say I started making films, that's no small task.
No.
It is challenging to be an actor or an artist of any kind, but when you talk about filmmaking, you're putting quite a puzzle together as a filmmaker. So can you just share some insight? How did you go about making that decision? Okay, this is a challenge. I don't see it necessarily changing on its own, so I'm going to take this path to do something about it. Can you kind of talk through your thinking and what were the steps that you tangibly had to take to make a film?
There was never a conscious, like in retrospect I can tell this story, but there was never a point in the moment where I thought, well, like, this is a way around this obstacle, but it was just like the only thing I want to do in my life is tell stories, and stories that I believe in, and play characters that I feel need to be seen, and tell stories that haven't been heard. Like, that is the only thing I want to do in my life, and I want to do that to a wide audience, and film is the only way to do that. And so, like, you have one of two options at that point. Like, either you say, okay,
run, hide, scream in a cave,
right,
yeah.
Which maybe would be the more logical thing to do, or you have to come up with another solution.
Naomi has a fantastic TED Talk that if this is a topic that's of interest to you, I would highly recommend. And I don't know how many of the statistics that you present in that are top of mind for you. Do you have any of those readily available to just help?
Sure. So only 5% of major films are directed by women. 95% of the stories that you have ever seen were directed by men. It's just a dumb system. It's unfair and it's hurting society at large, right? Because stories are so fundamental to who we are as human beings, right? Like every society that has ever existed has had some form of storytelling because it's like this very basic thing we do to process what it means to be alive, right? It's like consciousness breeds storytelling because it's the way that we understand people with experiences that are different than our own, but it's also just the way that we process the sort of insane situation that we're in of being conscious and alive.
So Naomi did not know initially why she was asked to participate in this event as someone who does not have a bleeding disorder or does speaking about bleeding disorders, but you did kind of draw one connection that you're like, maybe it's this. Can you share what you thought you may have been asked here for?
Yeah, so my second feature film is currently in post-production. We just shot it 2 months ago. It's called Bite Me, and it's a romantic comedy about the real-life subculture of people who believe that they're vampires, which is an actual thing. So there's a group of people in the world who believe that they need to drink blood to stay healthy. And so I've been submerged in that subculture for the better part of 3 years.
That's why this is an educational event. I bet none of you knew that coming into today, and now here we are.
And so, right, so I get this email inviting me to speak, and I don't know why, and I sort of read it too quickly, and I'm like, is this because of the vampire thing?
But so hearing what you're sharing kind of leads to an inevitable, so what do we do? Like, how does this change? How do we make it so that stories are being told by all kinds of people so that we have the opportunity, especially in a country as large as ours with as many different kinds of people as we have, how do we level the playing field for everyone and specifically for women?
I outline a 4-point plan for the revolution, which I won't get into here, but basically it's a call to action to audiences to actively seek out films by female filmmakers to be aware of this, and I have a website where you can find those films, and then also for female filmmakers to stop waiting for the system to change and basically storm the castle. So here's this incredibly huge, incredibly rich, incredibly entrenched system, right, that systematically prevents women from getting into it. So the one thing you could do is which we have been doing for quite a long time, is standing and screaming at that system and saying what you're doing is not fair, it's not right, it's hurting society, it's hurting your bottom line, it's not good business. And you can scream at them forever, right? But the thing is that in our case, it's kind of an immovable factor because there are people at the top of that power structure that would like to keep their power and would like to keep their paychecks and would like to keep their nice lifestyle. And they have no interest in it changing, right? They would like to maintain the status quo. And so change doesn't happen because the people at the top with all the stuff go like, well, maybe we should give it to somebody else. It happens because the people without the stuff go like, give us the stuff,
right?
So what I advocate for in the talk is women filmmakers just refusing to wait any longer and just going out and making our movies and getting them to the audiences who want them. And the more of us that just do that, the more money we're gonna make, the more the market is gonna move in that direction, and eventually Hollywood will either have to get with the program or will fall apart as they're doing anyway.
Thank you again to Devin, Kelly, and Naomi for participating in Powering Through. And thanks as well to the board and leadership at the Eastern Pennsylvania chapter of NHF for hosting our panel. I'll be right back with smart people saying smart things after this final word from our sponsor.
NCHS believes in being a proactive partner in their patients' care, which means providing services like arranging convenient and discreet delivery, encouraging adherence to therapies, and monitoring your therapy outcomes. They also provide reimbursement services to help with navigating insurance requirements, which can be overwhelming for families affected by bleeding disorders or chronic disease. With a pharmacist available 24/7, NCHS can offer comfort to patients that someone will always be there when needed. Check out their website to learn more, nchswecare.com, or call 877-626-6247. Again, that's 877-626-6247.
Today's smart person is Arthur Ashe, the first black tennis player ever selected to the United States Davis Cup team, and the only black man ever to win the singles title at Wimbledon, the US Open, and the Australian Open. Here's one of many smart things Arthur said. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. And that will do it for this episode of the Powering Through podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next month with another episode featuring another great conversation. Remember to subscribe to the Powering Through podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can also stream our podcast episodes, watch videos of our conversations, and learn about upcoming Powering Through events by visiting poweringthrough.org. Many thanks to NCHS for sponsoring the Powering Through podcast. Learn more about NCHS and their services by visiting nchswecare.com, where you'll also find links to their Facebook and Twitter accounts. And you can learn more about all of BloodStream Media's podcasts for the bleeding disorders community by visiting BloodStreamMedia.com. This episode of the Powering Through podcast was written by Heather Robb and Patrick James Lynch, produced and distributed by Patrick James Lynch, Joshua Sterling Bragg, Rob Bradford, Colby Crow, and Avra Friedman. Artwork created by Ryan Geelan and Katie Wright Mead, and the Powering Through podcast is edited by Allison Stoney. My name is Heather Robb, and until next time, take self-care of yourself.